sex-linked traits. This case or these traits, they are somatic traits, but they are carried on sex chromosomes, or they are the traits that are considered as somatic traits, but the genes which are responsible for the appearance of these traits are expressed on the sex chromosomes. So these traits are called sex-linked traits. The first scientist who discovered these traits is Morgan. His experiments on the Drosophila insect, he discovered that the eye color in case of Drosophila insect exists on the sex chromosome or X chromosome, and this trait is a somatic trait. So we need to illustrate the sex chromosomes in our genetic case. Here, the red-eyed female means XX chromosomes, and the male is XY chromosome as usual. Red-eyed female, pure red, so R capital, like the Mendelian cases, the normal Mendelian cases. White-eyed male, R small, Y. And in this case, for males, it's enough to express that trait by only one gene, because Y chromosomes does not have any other genes except the sexual genes. So the trait to be expressed in the males, it needs just one gene. So if the X chromosome in the male carrying the R small, so the trait will be the recessive one. If it's carried the dominant gene, the trait will be the dominant one. So the product from the crossing between the red-eyed female and white-eyed female is XR capital, XR small, so the female is red-eyed, XR small, Y, so the male also is red-eyed. يعني 100% of the individuals in the first generation are red-eyed or carrying the dominant trait, like the normal Mendelian cases or complete dominance. And always the ratio between males and females is 50% to 50%. The second generation, XR capital, XR small, XR capital Y, products will be XR capital, red-eyed female, XR capital Y, red-eyed male, XR capital, XR small, red-eyed female, XR capital Y, white-eyed female. The ratio between red eyes and white eyes are 3:1, like the normal Mendelian cases. The exception here is the sex chromosomes. Why? Because this trait is a sex-linked trait. The gene which is controlling the presence of the eye color in the Drosophila insect is expressed in the X or on the X chromosome. Another example for the sex-linked traits, we have some examples for the sex-linked traits or some diseases which are called which are considered as a sex-linked traits, like color blindness, muscle atrophy, short-sightedness, and hemophilia disease. And all of these diseases are controlled by recessive genes. So inheritance of color blindness in human, if the mother is healthy, pure mother, XC capital, XC capital, and the father is color-blinded father, or XC small, Y. The gametes will be XC capital, XC small, and Y. Crossing between these gametes will produce XC capital, XC small, and this is a female, healthy female. Why it's healthy female? Because the genes are hybrid dominant. So the recessive trait, which is the color blindness, will not appear. But this mother or this female is a carrier female. Carrier because she has the recessive gene. So it may be inherit this gene for her offsprings. While here the father is XC capital Y, he is healthy father. He has only one gene, which is enough to express that trait. Crossing between these two individuals will produce healthy female, but she is a carrier, healthy male, infected female and infected male. As usual, the ratio between males and females 50%, 50%. Like, or the same concept will be applied for hemophilia disease, which is considered as the blood liquidity, and short-sightedness disease, color blindness disease, the disease of the disability to differentiate between some colors, especially red, green, and blue, when they are mixed together. Okay, now we will talk about another trait, another exception, which is the sex-influenced traits. Sex-influenced, they are the traits that their genes are carried on the somatic chromosomes normally, on the autosomes, but the action of these genes is affected by sex hormones, male hormones or female hormones, like the baldness in men and the presence of horns in cattle. Baldness in man is considered as a sex-influenced trait. Why? Because the gene arises, exists in both male and female, but the trait will appear in males only because this trait is affected by, influenced by the testosterone hormone or the male hormones. Here we have a herd mother, B positive B. Positive means the presence of the gene, and B positive B, the same genotype, but he will be an infected father, a balded father or bald-headed father. Why? Because this gene or this trait, its presence is affected by testosterone hormone. Here, the product of the crossing between these two individuals will produce B positive, B positive. Now we cannot determine if this individual is male or female. So we will say that if this genotype exists in male, he will be bald-headed male. If this genotype exists in female, she will suffer from hair fall. There is no baldness in females. Maximum symptom will be hair fall. The B positive B, if this genotype exists in a male, he will be a bald-headed male. If it exists in the female, she will be normal hair female because the gene is affected by testosterone hormone. BB, يعني they are healthy, male and female. What about the sex-limited traits? Sex-limited traits, they are the traits that are limited for only one sex, for males only or for females only, like milk production or breastfeeding. It's the trait which is limited for or limited on only females. Ability to lay eggs in birds, limited on females only. Appearance of beards, limited on males only. And these are called sex-limited traits. They are limited for only one sex, males or females. And sure, they are affected by sex hormones. And this is our last part in the first unit or in the genetics. Let's start the second unit, taxonomy. Firstly, we need to know what's meant by taxonomy. Taxonomy, it's the science which studies the arrangement of living organisms according to their similarities and differences to facilitate their study. There are many trials for different scientists to classify the to classify the organisms. The first one who tries to classify the living organisms, he was Aristotle. Aristotle classified the animals into blooded and bloodless animals, and the plants into shrubs, weeds, and trees. And this is the first trial to classify the living organisms. Then another scientist who is Carl Linnaeus, he classified the living organisms into two main groups, animals and plants, kingdom Animalia, kingdom Planta. Then Robert Whittaker, the scientist who classified the living organisms into 5 kingdoms, kingdom Monera, Protista, Fungi, Planta, Animalia. And this is called the modern classification or modern taxonomy. And this modern taxonomy mainly depending on the species. What's meant by species? It's a group of living organisms that have the same morphological characteristics, which interbreed, producing a fertile individual. When the individuals of the same species are crossed together, the product will be a fertile individual, or individuals that can reproduce to protect their species from extinction. But what will happen when two different individuals from two different species are crossed together, like lion and tiger, female lion and male tiger? The product will be the tigon, and this tigon is an infertile individual or a sterile individual. Crossing between donkey female and horse male, the product is mule. This mule is an infertile or sterile individual. So to produce a fertile individuals, crossing must be takes place between the individuals of the same species. طيب. From the trials of scientists, or during the trials of scientists to classify the elements, Carl Linnaeus make a system for naming these living organisms, which is called binomial system. Bi in Latin language means two, nomial names. So the binomial system, it means that each living organism will has two names. The first name is the name of the genus, and the second name is the name of the species. Let's discuss firstly what's meant by the genus and the species. It's the taxonomy hierarchy. Taxonomy hierarchy is the arrangement of living organisms in different categories according to the similarities between them. So the first or the largest number of individuals are in the kingdom. Then we have another subdivision or another category, which is phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. And these are the taxonomy hierarchy, or the different categories and subdivisions of living organisms. So each living organism will take the name of the genus and the species which it belongs to. So let's repeat again. In the binomial system, every organism has a binomial name, two names. These two names are the name of the genus, the first name. Second name is the name of the species. And always, name of the genus will begin by a capital letter, and name of the species will be with a small letter. And the language which is used in the binomial system, or the language which is used in most of the scientific researches, is the Latin language. So we will use, these names will be written in a Latin language or in an italic or underlined lines to be differentiated, to know that this is a name of a living organism. It's a scientific name. For example, scientific name for cats. In Latin language, it is the Felis domesticus. Felis, it's the cats in Latin. Domesticus means domestic cats. And we have many species of cats. From these species, the domestic cats. And all of them are considered as cats, but by different species. So the name of cats, domestic cats, is Felis domesticus. It's underlined. The Felis, or the name of the genus, starts by the first capital letter, and the name of the genus starts by a small letter. And this is our rule in the binomial system for any living organism. Okay, then what's meant by dichotomous key? Dichotomous key, it's a series of characteristics that are arranged in pairs to help the user to determine the species of an unknown organism. Yani here we have vertebrates. It's a large group of individuals. In this vertebrates, some animals have fur and others with no fur. Animals which have fur like mammals, animals with no fur like maybe they will have feathers or no feathers. If they have feathers, they will be birds. If they have no feathers, maybe they have dry skin or moist skin. If they have a dry skin, they will be reptiles. If they have moist skin, they will be fish or amphibians. If they have scales, they will be fish. If they have no scales, they will be amphibian. So if you are going to search about an unknown organism, you have to follow this dichotomous key to facilitate your search. And this is our introduction in the taxonomy. Then, during our lessons, we will discuss the 5 kingdoms, the classification of the 5 kingdoms. But firstly, let's classify the living organisms in general before classifying them into kingdoms, into prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Prokaryotes, طبعا, they are very tiny. They have no true nucleus and no organelles. That means that these organisms, of these individuals with no normal structure of nucleus. Yani there is no nuclear membrane, there is no nucleolus, there is no nucleoplasm, but the DNA is scattered in the cytoplasm with no cover or with no envelope. But the eukaryotes or eukaryotic organisms, they are large, more complex cells, larger. They have a nucleus, normal nucleus structure, and they have numerous organelles. All of the normal cell organelles, as we studied before in the first term, exist in the eukaryotes. Eukaryotes maybe have cell wall, or no cell wall. Which have eukaryotes which have cell wall may be autotrophs or heterotrophs. What is the difference between autotrophs and heterotrophs? Autotrophs, they are self-feeding. They depend on themselves to make their food, like by photosynthesis process, like plants. While heterotrophs, they cannot make their food. They must eat other organisms or depend on the other organisms to get their food, like the fungi, yeast fungus, or bread mold fungus, or mushroom. All of these are considered as heterotrophs. Mainly, they are saprophytes. Saprophytes means that they feed or get their food from the remains of the food or decomposing the dead bodies. And the prokaryotes, they are only the members of kingdom Monera, which are bacteria. What about eukaryotes which have no cell wall? Some of them are unicellular, like protista or protists, like amoeba, euglena, paramecium, and all of these members are considered as protista kingdom or protists. Multicellular, like kingdom Animalia or animals, and we have a lot of phyla in this kingdom, but we will study this year only one phylum, which is phylum Chordata, subphylum Vertebrata. Then we will discuss different classes in this kingdom, 7 classes, about 7 classes, Ignatha, Chondrichthyes, Ostrichthyes, Aves, Reptilia, Amphibia, and mammals, or Mammalia. And in class Mammalia, we will discuss 3 subclasses, Prototheria, Metatheria, and Eutheria. In this subclass Eutheria, we will discuss 11 orders by different examples and properties. So we have 5 kingdoms in our modern taxonomy. They are kingdom Animalia, or animals, that can come in all shapes or forms, from humans to corals, snails, sharks, sea anemones, and they do not have a cell wall and they are mostly mobile. Plants, we recognize plants because they are usually green in color. This is because they contain chlorophyll. They will perform photosynthesis process, so they are considered as autotrophs or autotrophic organisms, and they have a cell wall. Fungi, they are not plants or animals as many like to think they are. Mushrooms, to add tools and molds that grow on bread. They have a cell wall made of chitin, but plants, their cell wall is made up of cellulose, and this is a big difference between plants and fungi. Protista, they are usually small single-celled unicellular organisms that can contain qualities of plants. Some of the individuals of Protista kingdom, they have green plastids like Euglena. Amma kingdom Monera, it's the prokaryotic organisms. They are the bacteria. They are very simple living organisms. They are widely scattered. They are very tiny, and all of them reproduces asexually, mainly, especially by binary fission. Thank you so much. Good luck, inshallah.